This is a $400 bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a $40 bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. Both are fermented grape juice from Napa Valley, California in a 750 milliliter bottle. Exact same grape, exact same region, virtually the same climate. One is $8 a glass. One is $80 a glass. Why? What is the difference, if any, between inexpensive wine and exorbitantly priced wine? Same grape, same region. And why would anyone in their right mind pay $400 for a bottle of wine when they could pay $40 for one bottle or get 10 of the same thing for $400? Is it just a scam for rich people to show off? I'm John Alanis, I'm a certified sommelier, and I'm going to answer those questions for you in a very unique way. I'm going to blind taste each of these wines and see if I can immediately identify the $40 bottle versus the $400 bottle, and then we're going to put them to the real test. I'm going to drink each bottle and see if the entire $400 bottle really is that much better than the $40 bottle. If there's some sort of magic there that's worth paying $400 a bottle. Now, are there any legitimate reasons why any bottle of wine should cost $400? Well, yeah, sort of, and I'm going to reveal them. You can decide if they're legit or not. Hey, look, there are 50 sips in a bottle, and that's 79 cents for the $40 bottle and $7.89 for the $400 bottle. Wow. Is any measly sip worth $8, the cost of a Starbucks latte? Hey, we're gonna find out. But here's a real test for any wine. It's not about the first sip. It's not about the first glass. It's about the experience of the whole bottle, how it evolves and changes as you go through it, evoking feelings, emotions, and long-lost memories. The best wines give you an experience that lasts a lifetime, and that might be worth paying for. That experience is something no one else talks about, certainly not the snort, taste, and spit reviewers. They're all about the sip, they're not about the bottle. But wine ain't sold by the sip, and it's enjoyed by the bottle. Remember, it's not about the wine, it's about the experience of the wine, and that's where price can kind of get sort of fuzzy. Now, on the flip side, I know what you wine industry types and veteran wine drinkers are thinking. You can't get a good bottle of Napa Cab for $40 at that price. It's all just cough syrup, sugared up with Mega Purple, and that's the real ripoff. Hey, you can get Hort for $40 as easily as you can for $400. But we aren't just picking any $40 Napa Cab. Oh no, this ain't a Magnum or Bonanza. This is a Chappellet Mountain Cuvée that everyone in the industry, from sommelier to winemaker, can agree is incredible value to a worthy contender to take on a $400 Napa Cab. I just got this one for $40 at Total Wine, and it is a steal of a deal. Now, let me show you the $400 bottle. This is a highly respected wine, the 2017 Shafer Hillside Select from Stag's Leap in Napa Valley, and there are reasons I'm going to reveal that justify the $400 per bottle price tag. Maybe. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna tell you the unusual story of both of these wines, why each one costs what it does, and then I'll see if I can pick the right one in a blind taste. But that's just the beginning of this wine fight. I'm going to give each bottle my proprietary whole bottle review and determine the winner based on the experience each bottle delivers. Will the $400 Shafer Hillside Select deliver an experience 10 times better than the $40 highly respected Chappellet Mountain Cuvée? We are going to answer that question once and for all. Let's get to it. What are the legitimate reasons why the Shafer costs more than the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée? First off, it's aged for 32 months in 100% new French oak. Those are very expensive barrels. They cost almost $2,000 a piece. Now, they impart flavors of vanilla and baking spices, plus they give the wine a polished, rounded mouthfeel. You can only use these barrels once, and then they lose their ability to impart flavor, and they're used in much lesser wine. The wine ages for 4 years before release in Shafer's temperature-controlled cave, incurring major holding costs, electricity, maintenance, etc. During this time, they cannot sell the wine, so there is a tied-up cost for capital. Look, they put a lot of money into this wine, and they got to sit on it for 4 years before they can even start to get any of it back. The grapes are grown on the rugged hillside volcanic croppings in the Stag's Leap area. Now, what's cool about this is the volcanic rocks absorb heat during the day, and then they re-radiate it up to the vines at night, so it gives it what's called a double ripening effect, really developing those signature fruit flavors of Cabernet Sauvignon. And the wine wine is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, and it comes only from this tiny plot. It's estate grown. Supply is very limited. In fact, the total produced for the 2017 Shafer Hillside Select is only 28,800 bottles, and I got one of them right here, baby. Now, the grapes struggle on the hillside since they're growing against rock. Now, this concentrates the flavor. Struggling is a very good thing for winemaking grapes, but it dramatically decreases the yields, so they can only make a certain amount of wine per acre. Yields here are about 2 tons an acre. On the valley floor, yields are high, 5 to 6 tons per acre, so you get more wine per acre, but it ain't nearly as good. Premium Napa land goes for as much as $1 million an acre, and so the land costs alone are staggering. Because it's on a rocky hillside with premium fruit, you cannot harvest with machinery. You have to pay very skilled labor, and that adds even more to the cost. Look, okay, we get it. It costs a lot of money to make a really good wine, but $400 for a bottle still? For real? We'll find out if it's worth it. But let's see why the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée goes for only $40 per bottle and is really darn good. First off, as a marketer, there's one thing I will say about Chappellet that other people completely miss about the price, and it's absolutely brilliant. The $40 Mountain Cuvée is such great value that it makes you want to try their $80 cab and the $250 signature wine, and both of them are excellent. In direct marketing, we call that a low-cost front-end product that leads to a higher cost back-end sale based on establishing a great relationship at the beginning from delivering such great value. You don't expect the value that you get from a $40 bottle of Napa Cab, and boy, does Chappellet ever deliver. Shafer has some good lower-cost wines, but look, I'm going to be honest with you, it ain't nearly as good as a Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. So I give Chappellet major points for being much better marketers, much better business people, using a lower-cost wine to the consumer to drive to their higher-cost wines. Absolutely brilliant. Now, the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée is not 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. It is a Bordeaux-style blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Cab Franc. The winemaker can adjust the blend every year to produce the best wine. Since it's not estate grown, they can source their fruit from anywhere. But Chappellet is a very high quality producer, so it sources its fruit only from trusted mountain fruit partners. Now, when you see estate grown on the label of a bottle of wine, it means that 100% of the grapes have to come from properties they either own or control. They can't get them anywhere else. To me, the Bordeaux-style blend is a point in Chappellet's flavor, because I love blends, because as you go through the bottle, you can literally feel the wines begin to come together. You get black fruits and red fruits and sometimes blue fruits. I'm a big fan of the blend, so the Chappellet is starting to represent pretty good for $40. Also, Chappellet sources their fruit from the legendary Pritchard Hill. Not all of their fruit for the Mountain Cuvée comes from it, but a lot of it does, and again, that's a point in their favor. One thing that's neat about Pritchard Hill is there's a lot of iron in the soils, so the wines have a bloody component, and I love that. Hey, if you want blood, you got it. Now let's talk oak, because that's the biggest difference. Chappellet uses some new oak, but they recycle a lot of neutral oak from the flagship wine, and the Mountain Cuvée is aged for 12 months instead of 32 months like Shafer, so it can get to market quicker. The holding costs are much lower. What this does is it dials down the vanilla while featuring more of the varietal fruit characteristics, and again, I think that's a point in their favor. It's not as rounded or as plush as a Shafer because it does not spend as much time in oak, but wow, do you get a lot of great rounded berries, blackberries, different kinds of red berries. And you know, the truth of the matter is, a wine can be over oaked, but hey, talk is cheap. The Shafer Hillside Select is expensive. We can babble all day long about this reason and that reason, but the only way to know if it's worth the exorbitant price is to first taste it, then drink both bottles and determine the answer by my whole bottle review. Not a ridiculous $8 a sip snort, taste, and spit review. This wine deserves more than that. So let's get started. What I've done here is I have Corvined 2 glasses, Glass A and Glass B. One is the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. One is the Shafer Hillside Select, and I have absolutely no idea what's in each one. So what I've done is I've had my mother write down the answer on a sheet of paper. What I have in front of me, I'm going to put my hand over my eyes. I'm going to show you the sheet of paper so you'll know what's A and you'll know what's B, but I won't. We're going to do this like the World Series of Poker. So you'll have an idea, and if I screw it up, hey, you'll know before I did. So what that means is, well, you know what the wines are. I'm going to have to guess those wines on my own merits and my theory and my blind tasting skills. Obviously, I have a 50-50 shot with no knowledge, but I'm going to give you my justifications before I make the call. So if you can see if I'm full of BS or if I have a clue, or the wines are really hard to distinguish. I don't think they will be. Now, I'll say one thing. I expect the Shafer Hillside Select to have substantially more vanilla and baking spices on the nose, so I should be able to make the call on that alone. But I'm going to taste it to be sure, because if you start making calls just on what you get a whiff from, unless you're someone like Fred Dame, you're going to get into trouble. The wine deserves the full attention of sight, nose, and palate. I'm going to give each wine an initial impression, sip and swallow score, like the Snort, Taste, and Spit reviewers do. It's a snapshot. And then we'll let each bottle tell me if I was right or if it was wrong. Remember, it's not about the initial sip, and honestly, it's not about any single sip. It's all about all 50 sips together, how the wine evolves and changes as you go through the bottle, and whether or not it evokes emotion and feelings and memories and takes you places. That's the real reason why we chase these magical bottles of wine for that, and you just don't get that in a Snort, Taste, and Spit review. Now, what I'm going to do after I give my initial impression is I'm going to give you my Nostradamus wine prediction of how high I think each bottle can go, and we'll see if my final whole bottle score matches up to that. Sometimes I get them right. A lot of times I get them dead wrong, because it's really hard to predict where these wines are going to go. That's why I only evaluate on whole bottle review. All right, enough of this talking. It's time to find out if the Shafer Hillside Select really is 10 times better than the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cover my eyes up, and I'm going to hold up this piece of paper for you that has both A and B on it. Here we go. All right, I think that's on the camera. Have a look and see. And I'm going to put this back down here. It's more of a brown piece of paper. You guys should know what the wines are. And I'm going to get out my white paper so we can evaluate the site. All right, what do we have here? Let us start with wine B. Have a look at the site here. I do not see any mega purple in this. I mean, this is a nice ruby violet wine. I don't see much orange around the edges. Now, I'll say one thing that is interesting. We're going with the 2023 Chappellet Mountain Cuvée, so I would expect to see no orange whatsoever. We're also going with the 2017 Shafer Hillside Select, so there's almost about 10 years on there, so I might expect a little bit of orange. But again, you don't want to get fooled by sight. If you make a call on site, you're going to get in big trouble. So this is wine B. Let's have a look at wine A and see what we have here. Oh, I got it. So this one is, yeah, this one is a little bit deeper. There's a little bit more orange around the rim. I see 3 different rings, definitely some orange. This gives me a clue, but if you think I'm going to make a call based on that, I've gotten in way too much trouble too many times to do that. So let's have a nose of B. See what we get. Immediately, get a lot of fruits on there. Get a lot of black fruits, get a lot of red fruits. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some baking spices in here too. I don't get a lot of vanilla on this one. Yeah, maybe some vanilla on this one. You don't want to ever let your mind fool you. You want to let the wine speak for itself. This is why we go through the whole process. All right, I'm going to say that this wine features the fruit. Let's have a look at wine A and see what we get on the nose here. This nose is definitely more complex. There's definitely layers and layers and layers of both black fruits, some blue fruits, some red fruits. I don't get a lot of vanilla jumping out right at me, though. So it could be that the oak is very well integrated now, which certainly tends to happen. But while I have a suspicion of which wine is which, I'm not going to make a call because the vanilla isn't jumping out at me as I thought that I would. That's why we never prejudge our wines. That's just a gorgeous nose, but it's a very, very complex, layered nose. While this one, there's a lot of fruits, but it doesn't seem to have the complexity. So let's go ahead and have a taste. Wine B. You guys know what it is. I don't, and we'll see. Wow. Definitely get a very ripe plum, getting tannins around there. A lot of black fruits, blueberry. Not quite jammy, but definitely an overripe characteristic. Definitely featuring the fruit. Maybe a little bit of blood on there, but again, you don't want to put things into your mind just because you read something. That's a very nice wine. So let's go ahead and try wine A, and then we're going to see if I get them blind or not. Wow. That one is definitely more tart, definitely more tannic. I don't seem to be getting a lot of depth with it, though. I thought I got a lot of depth on the nose. I thought I got definitely a lot of black fruits. The fruit is, I would say, ripe, not overripe. It's got a beautiful long finish. I got to tell you, the $400 bottle and the $40 bottle, maybe I'm not an advanced or master sommelier, but there's not on the first sip anyone that's really jumping out to me. So I am going to go with A, because it looks older, it tastes older. I'm going to say that A is the Shafer Hillside Select, the $400 bottle. And I'm going to say that B, because it has a little bit of a jammier, riper component to it, I'm going to say that B is the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. But it's not really jumping out one way or the other at me. So let's see if I got it right, or maybe I got it wrong. I'm really not sure about this one, to tell you the truth. All right. I did get it right. A, Shafer Hillside Select. B, Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. But it was the sight and the nose which really gave it to me. It wasn't the palate. Actually, on first sip, I really liked the Mountain Cuvée a little bit better, but you did get a riper, jammier component. This is kind of a starting off point. It's a jumping off point. It's going to be really interesting to see how this one changes and evolves as I go through the bottle. On a first sip, obviously, I wouldn't say that's a $400 bottle of wine, but that's why we don't evaluate on sips. And that's why we use our theory in blind tasting. So I made an educated guess, but it was like a 55-45 educated guess. I got it. I'm kind of happy with it, but it didn't just jump out to me. So what I'm going to do is, oh, geez. I am going to... When it comes to my whole bottle, my initial sip and swallow score, I'd like to be a little bit generous so I can give the wine room to go up, but also room to go down. I hate to downgrade a bottle of wine, but I've done it from time to time, and I actually did it with a $240 bottle that just didn't go anywhere. But we'll see what happens with the $400 bottle. I suspect this is going to go somewhere. So my initial sip and swallow scores, nothing really smacked me in the face and blew me away. I'm going to give each one of these a 96.5. So remember, the $40 and the $400 bottle of wine, I'm going to give similar scores to. But the tell is going to be the evolution of the wine. I think that wine B, the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée, it could get up to a 97.5. But it's probably not going to be any more complex to that. This one, the $400 Shafer Hillside Select, it could get up to 98.5, because what I'm looking for in this one is there an emotional component to this wine. And that's what we're going to find out. Remember, on the nose, there's a little tight on the nose to me. A great starting point. It just felt like there was an infinite layers of stuff kind of packed in there. And if that stuff unwinds like I thought that it could, this could turn into an amazing bottle of wine. Look, both of them are going to be good, but I'm going to be as fascinated as you are to find out what happens with a whole bottle review, because quite frankly, while I'm making my predictions, I don't have a clue. It was hard enough telling them apart on a initial sip and swallow review. I had to use my wine theory to really get down to it. And that's good sommeliering, but you know, you kind of want one to jump out immediately, but that's why we don't evaluate on initial sip. So I'm going to drink both of these bottles. I'm going to return, and I think I am going to give you the most fascinating whole bottle review of each one that I've ever given. $40 for the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée, $400 for the Shafer Hillside Select 2017. Which one's going to be better? Let's find out together. I return fully recovered from my wine hangover and ready to give you the most intriguing whole bottle review I've done yet. This is the $40 Chappellet Mountain Cuvée versus the $400 Shafer Hillside Select, and you are going to see why we do the whole bottle review, not just a snort, taste, and sip review. As you can see, both bottles have been fully consumed and are ready for review. So let's get right into it. And of course, we're going to start with the $40 Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. I want to go through this glass by glass because this was a really good bottle of wine. And so it really, the thing that defined it for me in the beginning was this wonderful rounded berries, blackberries, some red berries in there. You get that a little bit from the Merlot, black plum, red plum. It was just these gorgeous rounded berries. It was almost like eating a bowl of berries that was right in front of me. There was a little bit of vanilla from oak. There was a little bit of rough tannin in there. I thought it was quite an enjoyable start to the wine. Now, one thing that it did have when I tasted it, definitely an overripe fruit characteristic, which is going to be indicative of Napa. There's not any earth or maybe just a tiny bit of tobacco in there, so you could certainly tell it wasn't a Bordeaux, but it was a Bordeaux-style blend. And what I really liked was that it gave me a whole bunch of fruit in the beginning to start with. So, as you can see here, I have taken notes from both of these wines as I went through them, and so we're going to go through the glass by glass review. I just described glass 1 to you. Now, what happened as we got into glass 2 of the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée? There was a very gradual coming together of the wine, and so what I really like about some of the blends and stuff is they start out really sort of disparate, sort of like you're making chocolate chip cookies. And then as you go through them, you can feel the blends really begin to come together. You get a lot of that in Right Bank Bordeaux especially, but it is noticeable in some of the California blends as well. And so I went from, say, blackberries over here to red plums here, to like blackberry red plum, but this thing was still all about the fruit. There really weren't any tertiary flavors that began to come up, and the rough tannins, they polished out a little bit, but you could tell those rough tannins were still there. Again, this was a $40 bottle of wine, but I found it to be very, very enjoyable for what it is. So as I went through and we got into glass 3, it just became a very relaxing, enjoyable bottle and glass of wine. I actually enjoyed each glass from one to the other to the other. There was a very slow evolution, sort of like a slow river moving along. But I found that this wine relaxed me. I found that it mellowed me. It didn't really bring up any emotional components, but it put me in a really nice place. Kind of like, this is how it should be when you're drinking a wonderful glass of wine. And so it put me into actually a really good, happy mood. I didn't have any emotions or feelings or anything come up, but the mood that it put me in was really good. And it just kind of moved me along slowly on this river. I didn't have any expectations for it. I didn't have any disappointments for it. The wine moved me where it wanted to go, very slow, just a lot of these gorgeous rounded fruits that began to kind of lengthen and heighten as I went through it. There wasn't any momentum that it suddenly gained. It didn't suddenly become what it was not. It was just really slowly consistent all the way through. And it was almost a gentle wine. And it kind of moved me along this river. And then right at the end, just kind of deposited me on the bank and said the journey was over. Thanks for riding. And it was a really fantastic journey. So was I happy spending $40 for this wine? Absolutely. To me, I would have been happy spending $80 for this wine. But I had $40 worth of expectation for it. And I think that factored into it a little bit. So if you want a great Napa Bordeaux style blend, you can never go wrong with Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. So the score I'm going to give it is kind of the score that it started with, 96.5, because I only got a very bit of slow evolution, didn't really get much emotional component. But for a $40 bottle of wine, that's pretty darn good. And remember, I always like to give way higher scores than the snort, taste, and spit reviewers to start with, because we're looking for movement. We want to see movement up or we want to see movement down. Definitely no movement down in this wine. You could say a tiny bit of movement up, but I didn't think it was enough to even move it half a point. But for a $40 bottle of wine, I was really, really happy with this, and I think you would really enjoy it too. Highly recommend it. Now, let us come to the 2017 Shafer Hillside Select for $400, because here's where things get interesting. As you remember from the beginning of my video, when we got into the initial sip and swallow score, it was a little bit difficult for me to tell the wines apart. And I could pretty much do it by sight. You see an orange rim around a 10-year-old wine, you're going to be able to get it. But what I wanted to see was, on the initial sip, did the Shafer really jump out and grab me and smack me around a bit and say, hey, I'm the Shafer, you paid $400 for me, love me? No, it didn't. It was actually a little bit hard for me to kind of tell immediately between the two. But that, my friends, is why we drink the whole bottle. Because the Shafer Hillside Select, it was a wine that was going to hide on you a little bit. It was hiding in its cave. It needed to be coaxed out a little bit. You had to show respect to the wine for it to begin to open up and show its true colors. But once you did, wow, did the experience ever start. So let me read you some of the tasting notes. And look, I'll be honest, I got like through glass 3 of this, and I just stopped taking notes because I just got lost in the wine, and I didn't want to distract from that at all. I mean, this was truly a magical wine experience. But let me read you some of the things I wrote down as I went through it. So the first few sips of the wine, they just weren't that impressive. But there was something there, particularly on the nose, as you remember from my initial nosing. There was something on the nose that said, there's something really put together here. It's really tight, it's compact, but there's infinite layers of depth all squeezed in this little line, and maybe, just maybe, they'll open up. And so the wine hinted at something big. You know, tip of the iceberg, below the surface, all of that stuff, but that's not a terrible analogy for this. And so the first few sips just kind of hinted. And the other thing I will say about the first few sips was it was totally different than my expectations. I expected this to be vanilla, big blackberry, full-bodied. I mean, definitely a nice wine with a death mouthfeel, but that's not what I got. There was some blackberry, but the thing that defined this wine really starting off was this wonderful sweet tobacco that went through it. And I've had wines that have crunchy tobacco or dried tobacco that just weren't good. This was a beautiful sweet tobacco. And look, I'm not a smoker. I enjoy a good cigar on occasion, but my grandpa was. And this thing immediately from the very beginning in the first glass began to bring back memories of every single tobacco experience I'd ever had. A lot with my grandpa. I remember him smoking unfiltered Camels. I remember the smell when he first lit them up. It had this wonderful sweet smell to it, and then it turned sour. So that was one of the things that I remembered. He had a tobacco pouch, pipe tobacco that he would put in and smoke it. But every single sweet tobacco memory from a little kid all the way up until the last cigar that I enjoyed came back to me. And I thought that was just absolutely just phenomenal. Now, one of the things too that showed up in there was a fantastic chocolate note. I expected vanilla. This thing delivered subtle chocolate, tobacco, blackberry. But oh my God, the mouthfeel too. I expected this to be full, like cream in my mouth. It was actually lighter than that, even though it's a good high alcohol California cab. And so I would say it floated, but it became like a seductively fast flowing river, like a river that if you looked at it, it's not flowing too fast. Then you look at it, it's like, wow, that thing's really under the surface, really going really fast. And so this wine started to pull me along as I went from glass to glass. And what was really seductive, not just the memories that were coming up, it was actually a little bit of a greedy wine too. It made me greedy because, oh my God, I want another sip. I want another sip. As soon as I took another sip, and I was enjoying it in my mouth and I hadn't swallowed it yet, I was anticipating the next one. I want another one. I want another one. I want another one. This thing made me greedy. And I had to grab a hold of myself and say, no, man, don't be greedy with this wine. You only got 50 sips. Enjoy each one of them. Contemplate each one of them. Think about each one of them. But it would pull me along and I would literally have to stop myself from swallowing too fast and taking a big gulp to get to the next one. I've never really had an experience like that with a bottle of wine before. Myself, it's a California cab. But it was like, this wine almost made me greedy, I got to tell you. Luckily, I was able to slow down, maybe float on the top of the river while being pulled along underneath, and really just let this thing take me on this wonderful emotional journey. Because what happened was, I could tell you about the flavors. There's wonderful blueberries in there and wonderful black plum. There's a tiny bit of earth, espresso, cocoa, a lot of chocolate and a lot of chocolate tobacco and all that. And I could talk about that. I could talk about the wonderful mouthfeel. But around glass 3, I just quit taking notes. And the reason that I just stopped and quit taking notes was I just got lost in the wine. I mean, I literally just got lost in this bottle and I didn't want to get unlost. And it just kept flowing along and taking me. It was this kind of an odd, exuberant, higher feeling of just wanting more and more and more. That's the only way that I can describe it. And so I got lost in this wine. And it was like, I finally woke up from a trance because I took my last sip of it. I was just like, my God in heaven, that was a completely unexpected experience from what I thought it would be in the first place. And so, to answer the question, was this experience worth $400? For me, yeah, it was. I definitely spent $400 to do that again. Would I get the same experience or would I get a different one? I don't know, but the Shafer Hillside Select 2017 delivered me an experience that I didn't expect in any way, shape, or form. I'm still kind of thinking and tasting and remembering all those sweet tobacco memories. And I'm not a tobacco guy. So it was just really, really fascinating in that respect. So if I want to give this a final whole bottle review score, I'm going to give it a 98.5. Significant evolution from where it started and where it finished. When I tasted it, I was like, man, this ain't no $400 bottle of wine. At the end of it, I was thinking like, how can any critic review this on one sip. On one sip, how can you do that? Because you can't capture the essence of where the bottle starts you, where it takes. I guess I got lost in this wine. If I was doing a wine tasting and I got into it, I'm drinking this bottle, I'll get back to business in 2 days. So that was the effect that the wine had on me. So I'm going to go with 98.5. Would I rather have one $400 bottle of the Shafer Hillside Select or 10 bottles of the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée? Well, you kind of got to answer that question about where you are in wine, where you are in budget. Me, I'd go with the Shafer Hillside Select for $400 again. Worth saving your pennies for. And so it just delivers sort of an out of this world, totally unexpected experience for me. And if you can scrape together $400, I would recommend trying it for a special occasion at some time. You never know what you're going to get, but that was the reason why we do the whole bottle review, because you remember on my first sip, I was kind of struggling with this. I was like, man, there ain't no way this is a $400 bottle. Give me a break, man. By the last sip, I was like, well, I might have paid more than $400 for this wine. So those are my whole bottle reviews. Shafer Hillside Select totally delivers. If you want a great introduction to Napa, great price, what it used to be, get the Chappellet Mountain Cuvée. If you only got $40 to spend on wine, my God in heaven, you're gonna be so happy. But if you got $400, go get yourself a bottle of the Shafer Hillside Select, any vintage, and just let it transport you to another world. Now, what's better than one wine fight? One whole bottle review? Another one. So stay tuned for my next video coming up right